Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the read-along that I'm doing of The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm doing a read-along with Scott Danielson and David Wiley, both of whom have done their videos for this week. We broke this book up into 4 parts to discuss in the month of July, and this is the mytho-history that undergirds Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. These are the mythic histories from hundreds and thousands, ages of time, long before those more famous events, starting with Tolkien's In the Beginning moment, where Eru Ilúvatar, the one deity, creates the other deities who will then create Middle-earth, and then exit stage left. He's not really that much involved. The other gods are, including most especially the one evil god, Melkor, who goes into Middle-earth not to beautify it and enjoy it, but to rule it and terrorize it. And he brings with him a whole bunch of lesser servants. There are smaller degrees of supernatural beings in Tolkien's mythology. There are the Valar, of whom Melkor is one, who are incredibly powerful. They made the earth. They made the stars. They can move islands around. They are unopposable by mortal beings. But then there are lesser spirits as well. There are Maya that are lesser than the Valar, but still not mortal. Still basically supernatural energy beings. And several of those are corrupted by Melkor and go into his service, the most famous of which, for Tolkien fans, is Sauron. Other Maiar enter the world, including one called Melian, who falls in love with an elf king and magically encircles his kingdom with basically a force field, something that really can't be penetrated unless unless you have greater power than Melian does, or unless the doom that is driving you on is somehow mystically greater than her power. It's a get-out-of-jail-free card that Tolkien can use anytime he wants, and he does, especially in the chapters that we're reading today. In the chapters that we read last week, Melkor is sort of surrounded in his fortress of Angband by a leaguer of extremely powerful elf lords and some human men. And that is a watchful peace, but Melkor can't break that leaguer, and so he is contained, and the rest of Middle-earth is allowed to develop sort of peacefully. But the whole time that Melkor is contained, he is growing his forces, unlike his enemies outside, who are not. He is growing his forces, multiplying the evils and the kinds of evils that he can let loose on the world, and just biding his time. In possession of the MacGuffins that are at the center of this book, the 3 gems called the Silmarils that have an unearthly light, and that are the mover of the action in this book. They not only are, by this point, they have been stolen by Melkor and are in the crown of his helmet down there in the depths of Angband, but they are also the focus of an oath by the sons of the High Elf Fëanor. Those sons of Fëanor have sworn an oath, and in the pages that we're reading today, one of them actually repeats that oath, and that is to hound forever anyone who wants to own or hold or even gaze upon a Silmaril. I marked it, but I'm not sure how quickly I'll be able to find it. This is the, I don't even know, the 6th or 7th attempt that I have made to make this video. Not for not being able to find quotes, but for being able to talk to you instead of screaming over background noise. Yes, Caligorm pulls his sword and says, "Be he friend or foe, whether demon of Morgoth, or elf, or child of men, or of any other living thing in Arda," that's Middle-earth, "neither law, nor love, nor league of hell, nor might of the Valar, nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from the pursuing hate of Fëanor's sons, if he take or find a Silmaril and keep it. For the Silmarils we alone claim, until the world ends." And they seem beyond reach. Yes, Melkor is contained in Angband, but he also owns the Silmarils, and he's a Valar. He is not opposable. He's not beatable. You can't wrest this thing from him. At least that is the common wisdom. And the chapters that we're reading today really bring that out, because they are bracketed by 2 enormous battles in which Melkor does break the leaguer of Angband and strike out at the rest of Middle-earth. And nobody who reads these chapters is going to know anything about those battles or remember them at all, because these chapters also contain the 2 most famous standalone stories from the Silmarillion, including the most famous standalone story that Tolkien ever wrote in any format, the story of Beren and Luthien. But nevertheless, those battles start and finish the chapters that we're reading today. The first one is the Dagor Bragollach, which is where Melkor sends out sheets of volcanic fire to lay waste to the world, and sends out his forces, including Glaurung, the father of all dragons, who's still in his youth. He's still not fully armored, but he's still an almost unbeatable terror. And the Dagor Bragollach is not to be confused with the Battle of Brak de Kelbrath, in which Jason Harrigan and Mark Richardson and I fought an entire boarding party of Romulans on the bridge of Mark's battleship. We had sent out an EMP pulse just minutes before, so handheld energy weapons were useless. So the combat was hand-to-hand for an hour. But we proved victorious. But one way or another, that battle lays waste to the hopes of Middle-earth for a long peace, and it is followed only a little bit later by the Nir Naeth Enodiad, which is the Battle of Uncounted Tears, which is basically a complete victory for Melkor. He sends out his forces and wipes all resistance before him. Several very prominent high elves who've been around since the beginning of time die in those battles. And the second of the greater battles leaves Melkor in pretty much uncontested control of most of Middle-earth. There are some hidden kingdoms that still defy him, but he doesn't know where they are, or they wouldn't be hidden anymore. They wouldn't even defy him anymore. Instead, orcs roam freely in the woods and plains, and there's also that Glaurung, who is even stronger, a dragon who is even stronger, and who in one of those standalone stories, the story of Turin Turambar, shows that not only is he incredibly powerful, I mean Balrogs are incredibly powerful, trolls are incredibly powerful, but also that he is completely sentient, eloquent, and possesses enormous amounts of power, not just physical power. He's invulnerable, except underneath, in his underbelly. But he's also able to hypnotize people, to freeze them in their mentality completely against their will, even very powerful figures. And to muse on that, and to understand human psychology. In the story of Turin Turambar, this is especially prominent. Glaurung has a prominent role in that story because Turin is going to kill him. Going to get in a lucky shot underneath and kill him, in an explicit echo of some of the Norse mythology that Tolkien loves so much. But that story it's heartbreaking and fascinating and exciting, I admit that, but it does raise questions in my mind, as that story always has, about dragons and Morgoth, Melkor. Glaurung does not seem like he can be controlled. He seems like the most massive X factor on any kind of a strategic board. I don't understand why, if he can hypnotize people, freeze people, understand people, lust and desire things totally on his own. He's not collecting treasures or sacking strongholds in order to immediately send all the proceeds back to Melkor. He seems to have desires and wants and greeds of his own. If he can do all of that, I don't see what hold Melkor has over him, any more than, for instance, in a later age. I don't really know. It's an age-old question among Tolkien fans. I don't really know what Sauron would have done if Smaug the dragon had not been killed. Smaug doesn't seem like anybody's vassal, and seems like he would have abilities that Sauron could not counter. One way or another, none of that matters. None of those battles matter. None of Turin Turambar matters. None of this matters except the story of Beren and Luthien, which is the closest. I'm thankful to say it's one of the only instances, and it is the closest that Tolkien ever comes to writing Dude Bro. Because Luthien is not just the daughter of a high elf, one of these powerful First Age high elves that have amazing magical abilities. She's also the daughter of Melian the Maiar. So she's half Maiar herself, and has therefore an array of superpowers that no other two-legged being among the created beings of Middle-earth have. And she's walking around in the wilderness one day when a guy named Beren sees her, and she's just so pretty. that he falls in love with her instantly and is willing to pledge his whole life for her. And they go to her father, who is a high king of the elves, and Beren asks for her hand in marriage because she's so pretty. She's just so pretty. She's just unbelievably pretty. And Luthien's father refuses and gives Beren a seemingly impossible task. If you can go to Angband and take a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth, of Melkor, and bring it back to me in your hand, then I'll give you my daughter, Luthien, to marry. Beren instantly agrees because Luthien is just so pretty. She's just so pretty. Even the birds that fly in the sky agree about how pretty she is. So he sets out to Angband alone, one person. He's instantly discovered. He's instantly captured. But in the meantime, a super dog named Huan, a hound from the Valar. He's not actually a dog. He's more like a supernatural being along the lines of a Maiar. He has a master among the sons of Feanor, but he decides that he really likes Luthien because she's, I don't know if I mentioned this, so pretty. She's so pretty that Huan starts to like her and to favor her with his obedience more than he does the sons of Feanor. So he's willing to help her as she escapes from her father in order to go and help Beren. Because she's so pretty. That's the kind of the point that you want to get here, is that she's so pretty. That's why he fell in love with her. That's why all the elves want to protect her. That's why Huan wants to serve her. That's why eventually when they get down into the stronghold of Angband and they encounter Melkor, he's, keep in mind, a thousands or millions of year old energy being from outside of Middle-earth. He is not a mortal being at all, and he immediately falls into lust with her because she's so pretty. Is Luthien intelligent? Is she interesting? Does she have a way with words? Is she ironic? Is she strong-willed? I don't know. I don't care. Nobody cares. She's just so pretty that when she sings to Melkor, he falls asleep. Why she doesn't... we're not going to get into it. Beren decides that while Melkor is sleeping, helplessly sleeping, he will cut a Silmaril from the crown in order to fulfill his vow. But then he decides, well, why not get them all? Why not take all the Silmarils? And when he's trying to cut a second one, his blade slips and cuts the cheek of the sleeping Melkor, waking him up. Beren and Luthien flee, but the bridge is guarded by the king of all wolves, an evil servant of Melkor, who bites Beren's hand off, the hand that was holding the Silmaril. But the Silmaril can't stand to be touched by anything evil, which is why it didn't bother Beren, because he is pure of heart, mainly because Luthien is so pretty. But it does bother this king of all wolves. In fact, it drives this king of all wolves mad. It's boiling inside his gut. He can't get rid of it. And eventually that ends up with a fight between this king of all wolves and Huan. And to make a long story short, Beren ends up back at the king. And in one of Tolkien's clever little rhetorical twists, the king says, well, you failed in your quest. And Beren says, no, I haven't. There is right now a Silmaril in my hand. It's inside this ravening werewolf, but it is still there. And many things happen. There are many little twists and turns, but eventually Beren dies. And of wounds, of poison. And Luthien goes to Mandos, the god of all the underworld, the absolutely pitiless, ice-cold god of the underworld, an equal of Melkor, only Melkor has, over the course of centuries, leached out a lot of his energies into his servants. He has become much less than the Valar that he was. Whereas the god of the dead is not. He is a pure energy being from beyond the dawn of time. And Luthien pleads to have Beren back, alive, and the god of death agrees. For the first and only time, he feels pity because, and let me see if you can follow me here, she's just so pretty. So Beren comes back to life, and he and Luthien wander off into the wilderness where they don't even fear being hungry. They don't fear being cold. They don't fear being rained upon. Neither one gives any thought to it. On Luthien's part, because apparently she doesn't have any thoughts in her pretty little head, and in Baron's part, because she's just so pretty. And they go off and live happily ever after, as apparently the world's two sexiest zombies. And that is pretty much the only thing that any male reader is going to pay any attention to in the chapters that we're reading today. Despite the fact that there are literally earth-shaking battles going on at the beginning and at the end, it's not going to matter. It's all about the story of Baron and Luthien. The greatest love story of all time. I have heard Tolkien fans, without any irony, actually refer to it as that. And when I have, back in the 70s and 80s, when I said, the greatest love story of all time, really? And they say, oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, Baron and Luthien, yeah, man. And I say, okay. So what's Baron like? And they go on, he's tortured by his doom, he's valorous, he's so courageous that he's willing to attempt the impossible with knowing that it's impossible. And then I say, oh yeah, that's great. And what's Luthien like? Well, you see, she's just really pretty. Okay, all right, fine. One way or another, that concludes our chapters for this time around. We have now passed the gigantic embolism that is the story of Baron and Luthien. So we are going to move on next time to conclude the Silmarillion, and that includes the fate of the Silmarils, the fate of the Sons of Feanor, and also includes a separate thing that I think is one of the most interesting things that I have ever encountered in a work of fiction. So it's going to be a great deal. I've mentioned it before on this channel. It's going to be a great deal of fun to talk about it in a little bit more depth next week. So I'll leave links to Scott and David's videos, and we will wrap up the Silmarillion next week. So you join me then, when I assure you there'll be a little bit less piss and vinegar. I hope, anyway. Thank you, BookTube.